Hello, First Friday Club members. It's May 1, 2020. We thought we'd be doing this in person, but we're delighted today to have Father Stephen Katsouros from Arrupe College join us to give us a story that we would normally do in person. And we're obviously quite disappointed to be doing it this way, but we're thrilled that Father Steve could take time out of his busy schedule, not only to be with us today on this first day of spring in many ways in Chicago, but also to give us some history on Arrupe College, how it got to where it is today, and plans for the future. So the nature of this will be just a Q&A. We're thinking 10, 15 minutes, and we appreciate you joining us today to hear Father Steve's story. And with that, Steve, thanks for joining.
Listen, thanks very much for inviting me. Hello to everyone associated with the First Friday Club. It's an honor to be with you. Yeah, happy May Day. I'm happy to share a little bit of Arrupe College with you this afternoon.
Great, thanks, Steve. Well, we are the nature, Steve, of what I thought would be helpful for our First Friday Club members is a little bit of history. There's such a story here, and we've relayed your story many times, but in your own kind of words, help people understand where this started, kind of the genesis of Arrupe College and the concepts. We've read some things about how tuition works and other things, which we'll get into, but we thought it might be interesting to see what the germ of this fabulous idea was.
Sure, happy to do that, Chuck. So, you know, Arrupe College is part of Loyola University here in Chicago. I would say, though, this has been a journey for the Jesuits, and I am a Jesuit, that began 50 years ago. Actually began with elementary school education, and on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. The first nativity model school opened. That school was all boys for junior high school students who were really underserved, living in the tenements of the Lower East Side and in the projects all along the FDR Drive. It's a story that's near and dear to my heart. I started working there in the 80s, and that's a large part of why I entered the Society of Jesus. So the nativity model spawned 50 other similar schools, including Chicago Jesuit Academy here. Mm-hmm. All elementary ed, targeted for underserved young people. So that's elementary education. Let's speed up to the 1990s, and in Pilsen here in Chicago, Jesuits and their lay collaborators came up with a very exciting, innovative model for secondary ed called Cristo Rey. And I'm sure that many of you know about the Cristo Rey high school model. High schoolers who work one day a week in corporate or not-for-profit settings to offset their tuitions, again, making a Catholic secondary ed experience available to students who otherwise couldn't afford it. There are now 40 Cristo Rey schools in the country. They are all Catholic, they're not all Jesuit, and very exciting educational model. So you can see where this is going. Elementary ed, secondary ed, now it's time for higher ed. And you know, I think it takes the energy and enthusiasm of a city like Chicago to say, how can we make, in this case, a high quality, high touch, Jesuit higher educational experience available, accessible, affordable, achievable for young people who are Pell eligible, who would never think about going to Loyola University because, you know, the tuition would just be so prohibitive for them. But here's a way of making that education available, at least for 2 years, in a junior college environment. And I moved here in 2014 to launch it. And we enrolled our first class in 2015. So I think that's kind of the broad view of the genesis, if you will, of this educational movement that began with middle schools and is now taking root in higher ed.
Fabulous. That's such great history, and it's so interesting to see for many of us who've had history with Catholic education for ourselves and our children, but to enhance on the Jesuit reputation for education is just really inspirational. And that was where it first came up on the First Friday Club radar. Was we were hearing things about people that you were, as the founding dean, people that you worked with, and the program grew, and we saw things on CNN, and we saw things locally, et cetera. And then many of us have relationships at Loyola University, and so it's so inspiring to see and interesting to hear. One of the things that we've been talking about on the First Friday Club board is to get a sense of how you started to find students and then educate them. If you could speak for a few minutes about that, because as you've described it, a lot of these students have had challenged high school experiences, and but you go through a process to find them, and then I believe interview them. If you could spend a few minutes on where the student body comes from.
Absolutely. So, our students often come from under-resourced, underinvested neighborhoods, and they're also coming from under-resourced and underinvested high schools. Over 2/3 of our students are graduates of CPS. About 13% of our students are graduates of Catholic high schools, and the rest would be from charter high schools. We're a commuter school. So in many ways, this is Loyola University's a gift exclusively to Chicago, because Loyola is the largest Jesuit university in the world, and it attracts students from around the world, and certainly from around the country. But this is very Chicago specific. Our students travel on the CTA, they take Metro in some cases, they take buses, and they're coming from all the neighborhoods of Chicago. How are they selected? So we have admissions officers, we have admissions events, but here's the key. Students apply, online, and they receive recommendations, but then we interview them. So they come to our campus, they meet with our professors, and we get a sense from them, they get a sense from us about what this might look like. And I love these interview days because you really see the future of the college. And the students come in and they're wide-eyed and they're excited, and they're on Loyola's beautiful water tower campus. It's so impressive. And they hear about our financial model, which makes this affordable. Basically, what we do is, and we have financial aid officers explaining this during the interviews and at all of our admissions events, but our model is that our tuition is covered primarily through Pell Grants, through MAP grants, state aid, through the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. And for some students, they pay some tuition, but the tuition is generally between $1,600 and $1,700, $1,600. And then the rest is covered by fundraising, by philanthropy. So 61% of my budget is student revenue, federal and state aid, and then the 39% is covered by philanthropy. So there's an interview process, and then the last step is, you may know this, Loyola University has a retreat and ecology campus in McHenry County in Woodstock. And so students have an orientation program that begins at LUREC, Loyola University Retreat and Ecology Campus. Mm-hmm. And we're not a residential program, but they have a residential experience up front. They have a roommate, and they'll say, oh yeah, I remember Chuck, he snored, and oh, I remember Steve, he kept me up all night, but we're now best friends. And it's tremendous. And then they come back into the rest of the orientation at Arrupe, and they get oriented to our campus. So the first day of classes is about 10 days later, and it's always smooth sailing. They know how to get there. They know what their commute looks like. They've met their advisors. They've met their faculty members. They've met staff and administrators. They've made some new friends, and so they're comfortable. Mm-hmm. So that's the admissions process, enrollment process.
That's great, and to help them build a bridge, right, to the higher ed experience is fabulous, because it's often what dominates, right, what people hear about school is the friends they've made, relationship they've formed. As it relates to that growth then from the Arrupe program, which is a 2-year program, as I understand it, and then the hope then is to prepare and steer the students to a 4-year or broader program. How would you describe how that's going, and what percentages are able to move to that level?
We're in our 6th admission season right now. We've graduated 3 classes. The 4th class graduates in August. We're year round. So our students take classes fall semester, spring semester, and then a special summer session as well. And you know, you use the most appropriate word. We are a bridge program. We are the first educational experience right after high school. So we're the first post-secondary ed experience that they have. And, you know, our graduation rates are 6 and 7 times higher than the national averages for two-year colleges. What gets better is that, you know, of our graduates, close to 90% enroll in 4-year programs in senior institutions. And then get a load of this. So, you know, our first cohort enrolled in 2015. Record numbers graduated in 2017 with their associate's degrees from us. So last year, you know, so nationally, I should say, for two-year colleges, only 27% of those who enroll in a two-year college attain their bachelor's degree within 6 years, only 27%. So we had 49% complete their bachelor's degrees in 4 years. We had 61% complete their bachelor's in December, 4.5 years. We'll have 75% complete their bachelor's degrees in May, this month. So this is extraordinary. And you know, at Arrupe, the goal is that they complete their associates with little to no debt. So 75% of our students report that they've incurred no debt burden whatsoever. And the other 25% report an average amount of debt being under $1,500. So these are all very, very hopeful numbers.
That's so encouraging, and it's so exciting to hear. Can you give the First Friday Club members a little bit of sense of where they're going in terms of programs that they pursue after Arrupe, or fields of study that if not to generalize, but a few that might give us a sense of what they'd like to do with after their Arrupe experience?
Sure. So a lot of our students really develop a great affinity towards Loyola University because, after all, we're a college within Loyola. So many continue on for their bachelor's at Loyola. You know, other Catholic institutions in the Chicagoland area, Dominican has been a great partner, as have DePaul and Lewis. UIC is popular, as well as other state institutions around Illinois. But we've had some adventurous students, you know, have gone on to the University of Wisconsin system. And also, you know, we really leverage our Jesuit connections. And so we've had students continue on at other Jesuit schools like Marquette and Georgetown, Loyola Marymount, Loyola University New Orleans, Loyola in Baltimore, Loyola Maryland, and Regis in Denver. So it's been very exciting to see this progress. We've had students go on to the University of Southern California. I remember this one student, you know, her father said to me, you know, USC, that's so far away from here. And I said, listen, let her go, because when it's freezing here in January, you visit her in LA and it'll be a good experience for you as well. She's graduating on time from USC this spring. They tend to go on to degrees. Well, we offer 3 associate's degrees in arts and humanities, in business, and in the behavioral and social sciences. And it's interesting, you know, because our students' exposure to Loyola and to the resources that we provide, students begin to imagine themselves in different careers, in business, in finance, in accounting, in the health professions, as well as in teaching and social work, and in criminal justice careers. So it's a wide variety. Now, also, I want to speak about our students who, for whatever reasons, are not going on for a 4-year degree. They are success stories too. So a strong partner for us is Year Up, and Year Up is a job training program. And a number of our students have continued at Year Up, and we have students now who are working for firms like Relativity after an associate's degree with us, and then training at Year Up. And I'm so proud of them as well for doing so well and for jumpstarting their careers.
That's fabulous. And I didn't understand the breadth of the places they go to school, and certainly USC is a great story coming from Chicago. That's fabulous. This may be a good time to pivot a bit as you talk about the prep that the kid, the bridge that you help them build, and then at a lower cost and not coming out with debt is a huge advantage, and is clearly a challenge for young people everywhere. And as you've described, you've got a new angle, a new pivot that you're going to be taking as you expand Arrupe, which changes your role, which is very exciting. But also, if you could speak to a bit about how that started to grow, and then what you'll be doing as you look to expand the model.
Almost immediately, Loyola was a shining light in higher ed, and I was fielding questions before we even enrolled our first class about the model. And a very exciting partner in this work has been St. Thomas University. So they are Catholic, but not Jesuit, so we pray for them. Anyway, this is in Twin Cities, it's in St. Paul, and so their president, Julie Sullivan, is really a great leader. I was just on the phone with her this past week, and so they replicated our model. There was a lot of conversation back and forth, and I sent people to St. Paul, and she brought her board of trustees down to Arrupe at Loyola, and they're enrolling, I think their third class now, and they've also had very strong completion rates. As the years wore on, this is my 6th year here in Chicago, I was getting more and more inquiries about, well, how do we do this? And we're thinking about, your model. And so back last year, some donors said, we will help you fund a replication feasibility study. So I hired Accenture, and they spoke to 70 stakeholders, including many students and alumni, as well as my colleagues and board members and donors. And they said, your model is indeed very replicable. So I talked about this with my Jesuit superiors, and they said, yeah, this is a very successful and sustainable model, and something that Jesuit higher ed and Catholic higher ed ought to be doing. And I've talked to the presidents of the Association of Jesuit Colleges and Universities and the president of the Association of Catholic Colleges and Universities. That one's Father Dennis Holschneider, who had been president here in Chicago at DePaul. And so, again, lots of enthusiasm. So I'm doing this enthusiastically, but also sadly. It does mean a new assignment for me. So after our graduation this year, I am moving back to my hometown, to New York City, and I'm creating a headquarters and designing a network, sort of like the Cristo Rey network. And the purpose of the network is to support the work of other colleges and universities who are interested in replicating our model. So that's what's next for me.
That's so exciting, and we're obviously, Chicago's sorry to lose you, but going back home and certainly with the universities in your home, if you will, that'll just open the door even wider, which is very exciting, and it's almost like a scientific experiment, right? If you can repeat it, what you're doing, it's valid, which is very exciting. Can you give us I don't want to ask anything in terms of the trade secrets relative to what you would do in the Northeast, but are there 2 schools or 5, or is there an idea of how many you'd like to expand this model in that part of the world?
I was in conversation with 2 different universities from 2 different time zones last week.
Oh, great.
And so, of course, we're recording this during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And even despite the fact that there's such uncertainty, there are some leaders who are saying, maybe this is, since everything is being upended, right, maybe we should be looking at new models. And this is a new model. So I'm, really so impressed with the leadership of these schools saying, during this time saying, well, all right, we don't want to forget about this population. There was just an article today in Inside Higher Ed, presidents saying their biggest concern is vulnerable populations who come from financially disadvantaged backgrounds, who began the pandemic, with some struggles, and we can't forget about them. And certainly my experience at Arrupe has been with our students who are Pell eligible or undocumented. Mm-hmm. They are they've been such a benefit for higher ed. They're contributing to the discussion about how to deliver a liberal arts education more effectively, and they've contributed enormously to the discussion of Jesuit higher education.
That's fabulous. Well, it's so exciting. We're just delighted that you could join us today at First Friday Club. We'll have to come up with a better name than virtual, and we hope we don't have to do this again. But we would welcome the chance someday to have you come back to Chicago and join us at First Friday Club. It was wonderful that you could join us with Mayor Lightfoot a few months ago, and that was our last live one recently. And so we're eager to restart in October, and we'll eagerly follow your success and your progress at Arrupe and beyond with all that you're doing for education and for a very meaningful part of our population that's currently underserved and has tremendous potential. So we're so grateful you could join us today, and please stay in touch with First Friday Club. We'll be praying for you and thinking of you as you take your plans east.
Well, thank you very much, and it's a two-way street. I just want to say God bless you, God bless the First Friday Club, and God bless Chicago. I mean, really, this was a risk to take, and Loyola University and the city of Chicago did it, and boy, what a benefit it's been for, I think, for the city of Chicago, and again, for higher education.
Very good. Thank you, Father Steve. Appreciate it. Good luck, and stay healthy.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.